listening to the Why Boarding School podcast, broadcasting around the world. Join us as we promote independent boarding schools throughout the United States and Canada with our invited guests. Now, here's your host, Dr. Jeffrey Quebec.
Welcome to the Why Boarding School podcast. I'm Jeff Quebec, and today I'm joined by the Dean of Enrollment at Phillips Exeter Academy in Exeter, New Hampshire, John Hutchins. Welcome, John. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you very much, Jeff. It's great to be here.
With such a rich history, having been founded back in 1781, Phillips Exeter Academy has the distinction of being the United States' sixth oldest boarding school. In 1970, the Academy went from being an all-boys school to coeducational. So, John, perhaps you can start off by giving our audience a brief overview of the number of students at Phillips Exeter Academy, the grades you offer, where the students come from, etc.
Okay, so thank you, Jeff. So we are a school of about 1,100 students. We're located in Exeter, New Hampshire, which is about an hour north of Boston. We offer grades 9 through postgraduate. And our students come from about 30 different countries and about 40 different states. Those numbers change a little bit from year to year. I think right now we're at about 34 countries and about 45 states.
And John, what's the academic curriculum like at Phillips Exeter Academy?
The academic curriculum is incredibly broad. That's one of the things that we're most proud of is the number of courses. So within our courses of instruction, there are about 450 classes that students can take. And so the depth and breadth of our curriculum is truly extraordinary.
So back in 1930, as a result of a $5.8 million donation from philanthropist Edward Harkness, he sort of had a proposal that Exeter, quote, "What I have in mind is a classroom where students could sit around a table with a teacher who would talk to them and instruct them by a sort of tutorial or conference method, where each student would feel encouraged to speak up. This would be a real revolution in methods. Hence was the beginning of the Harkness method." Can you sort of share with the audience what the Harkness method's all about and how now that relates to the way of teaching and learning at Exeter?
Yeah, thank you. That's I think another really distinguishing characteristic for Exeter is the Harkness method. And we will, in a few years, we will have been doing this way of teaching and learning for 100 years. So we're looking forward to that centennial anniversary in 7 years. And that will actually coincidentally coincide with our 250th anniversary as an institution. So we're looking forward to that in a few years. But back to Harkness. Harkness is discussion-based and student-centered learning. A key feature of Harkness learning is the oval-shaped table. So our students will sit around an oval-shaped table. The idea behind that really is equity. Everybody's in the front row. Everybody can see one another. Everyone is engaged in the material. And so the students will work through the material themselves by asking questions, by offering insights, analysis, and synthesis. And the teacher's there to guide the discussion and recenter it as necessary. But in an ideal Harkness class, the teacher actually will say very little, and it's the students that are working through the material. And in my experience, I have seen some other schools that use discussion-based learning, and some have even adopted the Harkness method. But where I think Exeter really distinguishes itself is we use that Harkness method across the curriculum in all subjects and in all classes. And so where I've seen it most frequently at other schools is in maybe an English class or a history class. And people have a different time or a harder time imagining what discussion-based learning looks like in the quantitative subjects. But we continue to employ that Harkness learning in mathematics and science and other STEM classes and subjects.
That's awesome. So, John, can you tell me a little bit about the visual and performing arts offerings at Exeter?
So again, we've got probably over 30 different performances a year that are offered by our performing arts, and that would be a combination of instrumental groups, vocal groups, dance groups, as well as theater. And so we offer each term, we have what one would think of as each term fall, winter, and spring. We have a school production, sort of what one would think of in terms of the school play. And so students are able to audition and participate in both the production as well as the onstage parts of those productions. But then we have a student-run theater club called Dramat, and so those students are producing actually dozens of plays and performances that are student-written, student-directed, and student-produced. And those take place outside of sort of the school play. And so in that way, students who might be involved in, let's say, athletics, they can still continue their involvement in the performing arts through that venue.
That's awesome. And how about on the visual arts side of things?
We have, in terms of photography and sculpture and painting and drawing, so a full complement of visual arts classes as well. That's really pretty exciting.
That's awesome. And John, would you say, are there any special quote unquote signature programs that are offered at Phillips Exeter?
I really don't think we have, no, I don't think we have any what I would consider to be a signature program. I think we do, we offer everything at a really high level. And I mean, we've got 62, for example, 62 or 63 athletic teams. And so again, a broad range of athletic offerings, a broad range of artistic performance, performing arts options. So no, we don't. I think really have anything that I would sort of put forth as a signature program, other than what I would say is the Harkness learning, which is really central to a student's academic experience. And there are, I think, a couple of other things that I think distinguish Exeter, if that's okay for me to talk
Sure,
about
absolutely.
at this point.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think that distinguishes Exeter is what we call our vertical housing. And so we do housing a little bit differently at Exeter, whereby students of different ages will all live in the same dormitory together. We like the leadership and the guidance and the mentorship that older students provide younger students, and then students will stay in that dormitory for the duration of their time at Exeter. And so they're, in some cases, developing relationships with their peers and with the adults in that dormitory for up to 4 years. And so that dormitory environment becomes a sense of identity, a sense of belonging, a sense of community, and really becomes the focal point for their residential experience. And we try to the extent that it's possible, recreate a microcosm of the diversity on campus within each dormitory unit. And so what I like about that is then dorms don't, let's say, develop personalities, usually developed on, or usually centered around, let's say, activities. And again, so our dorms are intentionally diverse, as is the student body at Exeter.
And like you mentioned, what a wonderful opportunity for the students to gain leadership skills there.
Exactly, yes.
So going back to athletics, which you mentioned, is every student required to play a sport at Exeter? And also, what are some of the athletic offerings that Exeter has?
So we have a physical education requirement. And so every student is required to satisfy a physical education requirement. Ninth graders are required to have 3 terms of physical education. 10th, 11th, and 12th graders are required to have 2 terms of physical education. And interscholastic sports is just one way that a student can satisfy that physical education requirement. So if students are playing interscholastic soccer or basketball or baseball, they don't need to also take a PE class. But they can take a PE class instead of playing soccer, basketball, or baseball. And that would satisfy their athletic or physical education requirement. And so we offer, I think just about all the sports that one could hope, between soccer for boys and girls. We offer football. We offer field hockey, cross-country running in the fall. I'm sure I'm going to leave something out, but junior varsity and varsity levels, with thirds right now available for girls volleyball. We have a thirds team for girls volleyball. And so students are able to try out and try sports. In most sports that we offer at the interscholastic level, we also offer what I would call what we call club level sports. So that would be, you can play club level soccer during the soccer season, and that's a lower commitment, and it's basically intramurals. And as opposed to playing 6 days a week, they'll play 4 days a week. And as opposed to a practice time of 2 hours a day, it'll be closer to an hour a day. So in that way, we offer a way for students who want to play a sport, but who may not want the commitment or may not have the skill level to the interscholastic sports. They're able to play and do do that sport.
That's nice. It sounds like there's a level for everyone with having that club opportunity.
Yeah, we're frequently asked the question: is it possible for someone who doesn't have experience in a sport to come and try? And I guess I would reflect on my own experience with my own children, who came and did multiple sports in which they had zero experience. Coming, my son, for example, came and in his 9th grade year, after years of playing basketball, went out for the diving team in the winter of his 9th grade year. My daughter similarly went out and played field hockey as well as ice hockey, again with having zero experience. So it is possible to participate at the interscholastic level with not having prior experience. And so that option's there for those students who want to try a new sport.
Oh, that's great. We're going to do, John, is we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation, learning more about Phillips Exeter Academy.
Do you have any questions or guests that you'd like to see on an upcoming Why Boarding School podcast? You can contact us directly through our website at whyboardingschool.com. Now, back to our show.
Welcome back to the Why Boarding School podcast. I'm Jeff Quebec, and I'm joined by the Dean of Enrollment at Phillips Exeter Academy in Exeter, New Hampshire, John Hutchins. And John, as we continue our conversation learning about Exeter, could you share with our audience what is a typical school day like at Phillips Exeter?
So our school day our school day starts at 8 o'clock in the morning. And it goes through, actually, we schedule everything as part of our academic day. So actually sports are scheduled within academic formats, the same as an English class or a math class. And so it's a little different from what other schools might have, where the academic day might go from, let's say, 8 o'clock in the morning until about 3 or 3:30 in the afternoon, at which point everybody is done with academics and everybody transitions, let's say, to afternoon activities. We schedule those activities throughout our academic day. And so people might have some people might be having an interscholastic sports practice at the same time other people are actually in class. And so our academic day goes from on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, starts at 8 o'clock in the morning and goes through until about 5:45 at night. But again, there's free periods in that day. Students will have at most 5 classes, usually fewer. And so classes will meet 3 to 4 times a week, or depending on, I know this sounds confusing, or 4 to 5 times a week. We have what we call reserve formats. And so some classes, for example, will use those reserve formats. And if they do, those classes will meet 4 times a week on week 1 and 5 times a week on week 2. So we have a 2-week academic schedule. And the classes that do not use the reserve format will meet 3 times in week 1 and 4 times in week 2. And so you can see not every class meets every day. So the academic departments determine ahead of time whether a class will use the reserve format. So that's published, that's known. And examples would be, for example, English and history do not use the reserve format ever. Science departments always use the reserve format. For example, that makes great sense for them in terms of doing labs and the like. And then what I've seen within modern languages as well as mathematics, some classes will and some classes won't. Again, depending upon the material and the level. For example, in lower level modern language classes, the department feels that more frequent meetings benefits the language acquisition, whereas students get older and more proficient in the language, less frequent class meetings are needed. So a student's class schedule on a daily basis would be, they might have a class at 8 o'clock in the morning. That's usually when those reserve formats are scheduled. And so a lot of students actually have a free period first thing in the morning. But if they do have a class, the general rhythm of the day is 2 classes that are 50 minutes in length, followed by a break. So 2 days of the week, on Mondays and Thursdays, students will have a 45-minute to 60-minute break with absolutely nothing. Things that occur during that time would be things like faculty meetings and department meetings. So the students are essentially free. And then 2 days of the week, we have an all-school assembly during that time. After that mid-morning break, which runs from about 9:45 to about 10:40, classes will resume at 10:40. We'll have two more classes that go through until about 12:30, at which point there's a lunch period, then two more classes, followed by a break, and then the last two classes of the day. And so, like I said, though, physical education and interscholastic athletics are scheduled throughout the day. And so it's possible for somebody to be in class while somebody else is playing ice hockey, for example.
That makes sense, especially with having so many different teams and uses of the facility, right? It makes a little more of a balance.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so we find that we absolutely need to stagger the use of our facilities, especially in the winter. We have got, for example, 4 ice hockey teams and 2 rinks. And in doing it this way, we avoid the need to practice, let's say, at 7 o'clock at night or at 7 o'clock in the morning, which I think is how some schools are forced into doing that, and they're scheduling practices outside of a given time frame just because they can't. There's no other way around it. And so again, this works really well. We have very well defined times during which our athletic teams can practice, and so that works well for us.
And how about the evenings? What are the evenings like on campus?
So just everything's done. I mean, the dining hall closes at 7 o'clock. And so after that time, actually, some of our instrumental groups and musical groups will meet in the evening. So students that are involved in various ensembles may meet between 7 and 8. Clubs will frequently meet in the evenings between 7 and 8. And then 9th and 10th graders check into their dormitory at 8 o'clock at night. 11th graders check in at 9 o'clock at night, and 12th graders check in at 10 o'clock. And so I know that may seem late for some, and my experience in the dorm is that most students are in their dormitory studying by about 7:30. But yes, that's when they can check in. And if they do check in late, I mean, where are they until 10 o'clock at night? Usually they're in the library or in the student center.
And sure, I imagine after such a busy day, they also get tired pretty quickly. There's so much good activities going on. So how about the weekends at Exeter? John, what are they like? Are there events on campus, trips off campus, different activities or clubs that meet? How does that work?
Yeah, so they're both. So I was actually looking at the schedule for this weekend, for example, and there's many of our students that are involved in interscholastic athletics will have games, contests, matches on Saturday. So that's a game day for us, as is Wednesday. And that's similar to many other schools. So typically Wednesday is a half day for schools academically, and then Saturdays are a game day as well. And if schools have classes, that's also, again, a shortened academic day. But we've got, for example, a theatrical performance on Saturday. There is a live accompaniment for a karaoke event on Saturday night. As well as other performances going on and trips off campus. So yes, we have actually a very robust weekend activity program.
That's great. And so what are the meals like at Exeter? Are they sit down? Are they buffet? Are they required, not required? How's that work?
So we don't have any family style meals, but we do have 2 dining halls on campus. And so the dining halls are open from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. And so during that time, students can come in. Meals are served between 7 and 9 in the morning, 11:30 and 1:30 for lunch, and then 5 to 7 for dinner. And outside of those scheduled meal times, students can go into the dining hall, and just like they might at home, grab a piece of fruit, make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, have a bowl of cereal, those sorts of things. Grab a snack, essentially. And so we do have nutritionists on campus. There's always a vegan option, a vegetarian option. Allergens are clearly labeled for folks that need to be aware of different allergens that may affect their dining. We don't require any meals, and so students are able to come and go as they see fit.
So John, is there an advisor system at Phillips Exeter Academy?
we do have an advisor system. Thank you for asking. And so our advisor system is based upon dormitories. So based upon my advisees, for example, all live in the dormitory where I'm an affiliate. So I'll see them in the dormitories regularly, and that works really, really well. And again, they will stay with me then until they graduate. And then we do have scheduled time within our academic day on Wednesday mornings for advisors to meet with their advisees. And our Dean of Students office actually does create and provide to advisors a curriculum of material that we can cover and go through in terms of having some real content that we are using and covering with our advisees.
So with them staying with you until they graduate, it seems like a wonderful opportunity to really build that family bond.
Correct. Yes. So that's similar to what happens in the dormitories with students, again, staying in the dormitory for the duration of their time. They're developing relationships with the adults in that dorm over a period of up to 4 years.
John, would you say, is there a typical Phillips Exeter Academy student?
So I do think the qualities that are common amongst our students are intellectual curiosity. Our students love to learn. And Exeter is a very academic place, and so that's really a necessary quality, and that's something that we, in fact, look for in the admissions process. So students who are eager to learn, who want to learn, students who want to engage with their peers in our Harkness class, students who are open to the perspectives of others. That's where our intentional diversity and the discussion-based learning really come into play. So students who are intellectually curious, who are eager to learn from and with their peers, who are collaborative in nature, who are, frankly, emotionally mature. We find that students who are emotionally mature, who can do what they need to do, be where they need to be, having done what they need to do, they are the ones who do best at Exeter. Our guardrails, I know we're dealing with 14 to 18-year-olds, but the guardrails at Exeter are a little wider than they are at some other schools. It may provide more structure. They might have, for example, a proctored study hall where students will have graduated independence when they have attained a certain level of academic achievement. So we actually have expectations that our students are going to be doing what they need to do. And again, we have support mechanisms in place, so it is not a college setting. But again, that emotional maturity is something that we find our students possess.
Well, yet they're certainly being well prepared for the college ranks.
Yes, yes.
So are there any cool traditions at Exeter that may be unique from other schools? Or perhaps there's that one tradition, John, that you hope always remains part of the school?
So one of the things that and I can't say that this is unique to Exeter, because the other school that's involved with this is Andover, and so our annual rivalry day is a huge, is probably one of my favorite days on campus.
Okay.
So we call it Exeter Andover Day, and that's the day when all of our teams will play against Andover, which is our main athletic rival, and they're just down the street about 45 minutes. And so that, and that's why I say it's not unique to Exeter, because I'm sure people on their campus would have a similar response. But it is really, I think, the very best of school spirit and school rivalry. And it's just a really, really fun day. So our teams will all go to this year, for example, we were away, so all of our teams went to Andover. I think we sent about 15 busloads of students down to Andover, maybe even more, to cheer on our students. So they're all dressed in red, with their faces painted red, with noisemakers, and they go from game to game to game to game and cheer on their team. When it's at Andover or when it's at Exeter, the same thing. They will all come, their entire student body will come to Exeter, and they will come, and there's a huge feast that is part of it. So the host school puts on a feed for everybody. Alums will come back, families will come. And again, it's just a really, really fun day. And I think it's the very best of school spirit and school rivalry. And so it's an enjoyable tradition. So that's one of my favorite traditions at Exeter. And really the whole week leading up to those contests, we call Spirit Week. And so there's different themes and things going on as part of that whole leading up to those contests. And it happens each athletic season. So fall, winter, and spring has a corresponding day. But really the fall one being the first one of the year, that's sort of the most exciting one, the one that's most well attended. And so that's one of my favorite traditions at Exeter.
So go Big Red, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
So, John, before we talk about admissions, is there anything about Exeter that we didn't discuss today that you'd like to mention?
No, I do think that some of the things that I think make Exeter unique would be the Harkness. I do think our intentional diversity. So we're bringing together students from as many different backgrounds as we can, and that's diversity measured in all kinds of ways. And I guess one thing that I would want to, well, and it kind of goes into admissions, would be our need-blind admissions process. I do think that really distinguishes Exeter, and by that, what that means is that a family's financial circumstances will not impact our admissions decision, and we meet 100% of the demonstrated need of all admitted students. And so, again, we are making our decisions without regard to a family's financial circumstances. And so we don't have any idea what that, or the admissions committee doesn't have any idea of what that looks like. We select the class we want to select. And then meanwhile, this financial aid portion of our department is going through and processing financial aid for all the students that have applied. And then we make a match at the end and say, okay, who of those that we've admitted has applied for financial aid? And if so, what does that look like?
That's great. So if someone's interested in Phillips Exeter Academy, how might they go about starting the admissions process?
And so the first part of the application process actually would be to complete what's called an online inquiry, and that's available through the Exeter website. And it's a very short form, and that will just provide us with the least amount of information that we need for a student, namely a name, date of birth, and an email address. So we can say, okay, we're going to start sending this student and parents, if they choose to provide that information about Exeter and opportunities for engagement. When we're going to be in their area, for example, hosting receptions, when an admissions officer may be in their area and able to provide an in-person interview if they're not able to come to campus. The next step would be, and some people start right with this step, would be completing part one of the Gateway to Prep Schools application. That's called the candidate profile. That's a little bit more involved than the inquiry form, but again, it's mostly biographical information about a student, so it's not a heavy lift to complete. That is a common application form, and so students can complete and submit that to all the schools to which they are applying. And then the next step would be to continue with the process of standardized testing, the interview, teacher recommendations, essays, and transcripts. All of those can happen in any order. Our application is available annually online starting on July 1st.
That's great. And so what is the Exeter's website? The
Exeter website is www.exeter.edu.
That's easy. Perfect. Exeter.edu. Awesome. Well, this has been great, John. I've enjoyed meeting with you and sharing with the audience more about Phillips Exeter Academy. And thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
John Hutchins, Dean of Enrollment, Phillips Exeter Academy in Exeter, New Hampshire.
Thank you for listening to the Why Boarding School podcast. We look forward to you joining us for our next episode. Please remember to subscribe to the Why Boarding School podcast and help us spread the word. Until next time.